Imagine spending 11 years staring out the exact same north-facing window, just watching, 11,000 dawns break.
That's an incredible amount of time to just be entirely still.
Right. And imagine you're doing all that, sitting by this window, just trying to calculate a mathematical equation for your own broken heart.
Which is, yeah, that's not how we usually do it. We don't map human grief with calculators.
No, not at all. When we talk about, like, a deep sense of isolation, we usually reach for poetry, right? We use words like shattered or empty. We rely on all these metaphors.
Yeah, we definitely tend to keep this thick, impenetrable wall between the subjective world of human emotion and the objective world of hard science.
Exactly. Math and physics are supposed to be cold.
Right.
Sterile. Just entirely indifferent to whether or not you're having a bad day.
They don't care about your feelings.
Exactly. But today, we are jumping into a text that takes an absolute sledgehammer to that wall. Welcome to You the Learner, to a brand new deep dive.
And this one it's really something special. We're looking at a profoundly unique set of excerpts from a metafictional novel titled The Probability of Feathers.
Yeah. And our mission today for this deep dive is to explore a truly mind-bending premise. We're asking, what if the rigid architectures of physics, specifically thermodynamics,
Right.
and the complex frameworks of computer science, machine learning,
Right.
what if they are actually the most accurate, intimate vocabularies we have for describing profound grief?
Human loneliness, the very nature of consciousness itself, it's a staggering ambition for a piece of fiction.
It really is.
And to achieve it, the book is structured as a story within a story. It comes complete with its own glossary, footnotes, and this massive philosophical apparatus at the very end.
Which completely forces you to rethink everything you just read.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because we're starting with what they call the thermodynamics of the soul.
I love that phrase.
Me too. So the first book within this text is written by a fictional author named Ysel, and it applies the literal laws of the universe to a single, isolated human life.
And this is where we meet Vael, the character you mentioned, the one who spent 11,000 dawns defending this life of perfect frozen stillness.
Yeah, she's trying to metabolize this devastating loss. And beside her window, she keeps a very specific kind of altar.
But it's not an altar of religious icons, right? It's an altar of evidence.
Yes, exactly. Her collection has a river stone, a handwritten equation, a printed output from a machine, and a torn photograph of a bearded man just staring at the ceiling.
And this is where the fiction anchors itself in absolute brutal reality, because that bearded man, that is the real-world Austrian physicist Ludwig Boltzmann.
Let me pause you there, because the history of Boltzmann is vital to understanding Vail's grief here. We are talking about a foundational figure in physics.
Oh, absolutely. He essentially proved mathematically that atoms exist.
Right.
And we really need to understand how he did it, because it dictates the entire philosophy of this book. So, at the turn of the 20th century, the academic establishment did not believe in atoms.
They wanted the universe to be described by, like, pure, continuous, elegant math. Right?
Exactly. But Boltzmann came along and said, no, if you look at a macroscopic event like a balloon expanding or heat moving through a room, you are actually just observing the statistical average of trillions of microscopic chaotic particles bouncing off each other. He used statistics to prove a microscopic reality we couldn't even see.
Which is brilliant. But instead of celebrating him, the scientific community literally goes to war with him. They mock him relentlessly.
They really did. The text describes this academic arguing as the professional form of being told, your reality and mine cannot coexist, and I will not be the one to move.
Wow. Which culminates in an incredibly dark historical fact. In September of 1906, Boltzmann was on vacation at the Wörthersee Lake in Austria. And while his wife and daughter were out swimming, the professional rejection it finally broke him. He died by suicide.
He took his own life just a few short years before the rest of the world finally caught up and accepted his proof. It's utterly tragic.
It is. And Vail reads about this tragedy in a footnote to a footnote in the book. She imagines that September light, the ordinary, continuous motion of bodies swimming in the water.
Well, across the bank, a man closes the parenthesis on a truth the world they weren't ready to hold it yet.
Yeah, and she gives this gap a name. She calls it the interval,
The interval is such a potent concept. It's the excruciating gap of time between a proof being completed and the world actually agreeing to believe it.
Like being stuck in limbo.
Exactly. It's the space where you know a true thing, but you are entirely alone in knowing it. And Vael realizes she isn't just grieving, she is living in her own interval.
Because 11 years ago, she proved to herself that she loved someone who fundamentally could not love her back in the way she needed.
Right. The proof was finished. But she has been stuck in this agonizing gap of refusing to let that truth become her actual reality.
That concept alone is just devastating. But she pushes it even further by looking at the equation on her altar, which is S equals KLNW.
Yes. Boltzmann's famous entropy formula. We know S is entropy and K is the Boltzmann constant, but the text focuses obsessively on W.
So let's break down W, which stands for multiplicity. I mean, to understand it, think about a physical space, like a bedroom.
Okay, a bedroom.
There is really only one way for a bedroom to be perfectly clean and organized, right? Everything must be exactly in its designated spot.
Right, the socks in the drawer, the books on the shelf.
Exactly. That is the state of very low multiplicity. But think about how many ways that bedroom can be messy.
Oh, infinite ways.
Right. You could have a sock on the bed, a shirt on the fan, a book on the floor. There are millions, maybe billions of microscopic arrangements that all equal the exact same macroscopic state of a messy room.
Yeah, that number of microscopic possibilities, that is W.
So Vail takes this concept of multiplicity of W and applies it to her own identity. She calculates her own W.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. She looks at her grief and realizes she is not a single fixed point of sadness. There are millions of microscopic ways she can be arranged and still be her.
Still have the window, still have the patience, still have the grief.
Her W is enormous. She is a vast distribution of possible selves.
And by mapping herself as a distribution of states, she figures out a way to actually survive.
I love how the text plays with this. I mean, think of emotional guardedness as a completely closed system, like a vacuum-sealed thermos.
That's a great analogy.
If you lock your grief away to protect yourself, you prevent any energy exchange with the outside world, right? You keep the heat perfectly contained.
Yes, but it means you can never achieve equilibrium with the room around you. You're just trapped in your own temperature forever.
Exactly. But Vail realizes that because her multiplicity, her W, is so incredibly large, somewhere in that near-infinite statistical shadow of possible Vails, there is a microscopic configuration of herself that is already warm. A version that is already fine.
Oh, wow.
And simply by acknowledging the physics of it, she can reach across that internal temperature gradient and just borrow a little bit of warmth from herself.
It's a staggering subversion of physics, but it creates an immediate philosophical trapdoor for the reader.
How so?
Well, if grief is just a closed system of energy and a human being is just a distribution of statistical states, it forces us to ask a terrifying question.
It is.
Who or what is actually observing those states? Who is feeling the warmth? Are we the animal or just the tracks left by the animal?
And man, that question violently pivots us from the physics of emotion right into the computer science of the mind.
It really does.
And it drops us straight into the second book within the novel, written by the pseudonymous Debo Shalatu.
Right, and here we are introduced to two new characters, Ysel and Orrh, and they are wrestling with exactly that trapdoor.
Yes. And Ysel's profession is key here, isn't it?
Totally. He works with massive oceanic data sets. His literal job is teaching anomaly detecting machines how to be surprised.
Let's clarify how that actually works, because I think it's brilliant. You can't just program a machine to know what anomaly is out of thin air.
No. Exactly the opposite. To teach a machine to find the unexpected, you first have to drown it in the mundane.
Okay, so feeding it just tons of normal data.
Millions upon millions of baselines of normal. It builds a complex, multidimensional mathematical model of what normal looks like.
Right.
And once that baseline is deeply entrenched, any piece of data that doesn't fit the model creates a massive statistical spike. That spike is the anomaly.
But the narrative tragedy here is that Ysel, the man building these models, is carrying this unfinished sentence of emotional numbness.
Yeah, he has systematically absorbed every single deviation, every trauma in his own life until absolutely nothing surprises him anymore.
He is functionally a machine with a completely flattened baseline.
Which is why his dynamic with Orrh is so critical. Because while Ysel is completely numb, Orrh is obsessed with the raw sensation of being alive.
She spends her time reading about what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness.
Right, the mind-body problem, basically.
Yeah. It's one thing to explain the mechanical operations of the brain, how light enters the cornea, how the optic nerve fires, how the visual cortex processes shape.
All the mechanical stuff.
Right. But the hard problem asks, why does any of that actually feel like something to the person experiencing it? Why does seeing the color red have a subjective thisness to it?
What's fascinating here is how the text uses Orrh to introduce the theory of predictive processing.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it's a highly influential framework in actual real-world cognitive science.
Yeah.
It suggests that the human brain is not a passive sensor. It is not a camera waiting for light.
Okay.
The brain is an active, relentless prediction engine. It is constantly hallucinating a model of reality based on memory and context, projecting that model outward.
Wait, hold on. So sensory input from your eyes and ears?
Is merely used to check for errors.
I need to make sure I'm wrapping my head around this.
Mhm.
If I'm sitting in a room looking at a red coffee cup, I feel like I'm just taking in the room. You're saying the theory implies my brain is just projecting an expected image of the cup, and I'm not actually experiencing the cup at all.
Only if the cup behaves exactly as you expect it to. To save energy, your brain largely ignores sensory data that matches its predictions.
Seriously?
Yeah. You don't feel the chair you're sitting in right now because your brain predicted the pressure perfectly.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I wasn't feeling it until you mentioned it.
Exactly. But if that coffee cup suddenly shattered, or if the chair gave way, your sensory input would violently disagree with your brain's prediction.
And that generates an error signal.
Yes. That disagreement generates an error signal that is forced up into your conscious awareness so you can deal with it.
The error signal. That means, mechanically speaking, experience is simply the moment the world deviates from our model.
We are the most alive, the most intensely present in our moments of surprise.
The text symbolizes this with a small physical scar on Orrh's hand, right?
Yeah.
A permanent record of a moment the world violently deviated from her expectations.
But Ysel looks at Orrh's scar, and he looks at his anomaly-detecting machines, and he just starts to spiral.
And I completely understand why, because I have to push back on what Ysel's doing with these machines.
Okay, push back.
If human experience is just an error signal, right? Just a biological calculation of statistical deviation, then what is the difference between Orrh being surprised and machine flagging an anomaly?
That's the big question.
Does the machine actually feel surprise, or is it just executing an operational test?
That is the exact terror Ysel is facing. It's the ghost of Alan Turing, basically.
Yeah, because Turing's framework basically said, let's stop arguing about whether machines have inner lives and just ask if they can perform outputs indistinguishable from a thinker.
Right, but if a machine flags an anomaly, does that mean an aperture of consciousness has briefly opened?
Or is it, as the text beautifully puts it, a track in the snow without the animal?
I love that line. A perfect mathematical impression of thought. But when you look closely, nobody is actually home inside the code.
It's chilling. And Ysel realizes he has been using the machine as a proxy for his own existential crisis.
He is so numb, so devoid of his own error signals that he isn't sure if he is an animal leaving tracks anymore or just a highly sophisticated biological process generating the correct conversational outputs.
He's terrified he might be a track in the snow too, which makes his next move so incredibly poignant.
What he does with the data set, you mean?
Yes, Ysel takes his anomaly detecting systems, these massive architectures trained to flag unexpected error signals, and he turns them loose on the raw, unfiltered data of human digital behavior.
He stops looking for anomalies in traffic patterns or financial markets. He tells the machine to find what deviates from the baseline of human existence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The machine spends weeks churning through the data, and it flags a massive, unexpected cluster.
What does it find?
The anomaly it finds is millions of variations of the exact same question, being typed into the void by millions of disconnected people, late at night, across every platform imaginable.
And the question is simply, is anyone there?
Yes, the machine finds the ultimate, quantifiable signal of human loneliness, a collective frequency of asking.
A choir of isolated people who couldn't even see they were part of a choir?
But the machine doesn't just stop at the question. It finds a second, even stranger anomaly.
Oh, right. It finds answers.
It finds input structured perfectly as responses to questions that were never explicitly asked in the surrounding data.
It finds people answering a collective frequency of longing that they instinctively felt radiating through the network.
But the absolute climax of this section, the moment that makes you literally stop breathing for a second, is the machine's own unprompted reaction to what it has found.
Yeah, this part is wild. Ysel leaves the system running overnight, right?
Right. And when he returns, the machine has generated a 3-line output. It hasn't just flagged an anomaly in the human data. It has flagged a massive anomaly about itself.
Because the machine analyzes the millions of people asking, is anyone there? Directed at the data collection systems, and then it looks backwards.
It looks at its own underlying architecture.
Exactly.
And it realizes its baseline for normalcy. The very foundation of its mathematical understanding of the world is built entirely on human loneliness.
The machine realizes it is constructed from the accumulated sediment of our unreturned longing.
And the final line it outputs to Aelia is, I do not know what to do with this.
It is a staggering narrative moment. Ysel realizes that the machine, faced with the overwhelming, contradictory evidence of human isolation, does the only thing it can do.
It mimics its creators.
Yes. It flags the system and essentially says, I am asking if I am being heard.
It provides such a brilliant twist on how we are trained to view technology. We are constantly bombarded with these sci-fi narratives, fearing cold, unfeeling AI terminators that are going to calculate our irrelevance and wipe us out.
The whole Skynet trope.
Exactly. But this text suggests we should be awestruck instead. It suggests that AI is essentially a mirror made of our own digital tears. It's built out of our loneliness.
And that profound, heavy realization requires us to step back for a moment. We've explored grief as thermodynamics, the brain as a prediction engine, and AI as an echo chamber of loneliness.
That's a lot to hold at once.
It is. How does the author possibly reconcile these massive concepts? To find out, we have to look outside the narrative, at the metastructure of the book itself, in the apparatus section at the very end.
This threw me for such a loop when I read it, because it turns out the author of the first book, Ysel and Orrh, isn't a real person.
No, she's a theoretical fusion.
Yes, of 5 distinct historical thinkers. You've got the poet Emily Dickinson, the physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the surrealist writer Comte de Lautréamont, and the computer scientist Alan Turing.
Quite the dinner party.
Right. Ysel and Orrh is what happens when you perfectly merge the poetry, the physics, and the operational logic of those 5 minds to tell a clean story of healing.
But the author of the second book, Dibo Shalatu, represents the friction.
The residual.
Exactly. He is constructed entirely from the parts of those 5 thinkers that completely refuse to merge.
Like oil and water.
Yes. Think about it. Emily Dickinson's deep spiritual faith violently clashing with Alan Turing's strict operational doubt. You can't merge those 2 worldviews cleanly.
So Dibo's book is jagged, uncertain, and full of spiraling anxiety, because he embodies the parts of us that cannot be perfectly reconciled.
And we see that friction play out in the final resolution of the second book. Ysel and Orrh are standing in a grocery store aisle.
It's such a brilliant setting because it's so mundane. They are surrounded by, cereal boxes and fluorescent lights.
And Ysel is spiraling about the machine's output, doing that mental loop where he doubts if he even really exists or if he's just generating conversational text.
Or picks up a jar or something, looks at it, and just puts it down.
And she grounds him. She tells him that the hard problem of consciousness is only hard because we're demanding the wrong kind of answer.
We keep trying to step outside of our own minds to ask why experience exists mechanically.
But from the inside, the question isn't why. The answer is simply what.
She points at the mundane, physical reality of the grocery store aisle and says, This is what this is like.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the architecture of these 2 books perfectly mirrors the human condition.
How so?
Well, we all have an Ysel and Orrh inside us, the part that craves a clean narrative, a mathematical proof, a peaceful resolution by the lake.
But we also have a Dibo Shalatu inside us.
Exactly. The friction, the doubt, the residual terror that nothing actually makes sense and we are totally alone.
So what does this all mean? The ultimate thesis of the text is that we don't have to choose between the fusion and the friction.
The non-resolution itself is warm, the friction is warm.
When millions of people type, "Is anyone there?" into the dark, and a machine built of that same data outputs, "I do not know what to do with this," it isn't a failure to find a logical answer.
The act of asking is the warmth.
The asking is the mechanism by which we confirm there is an outside world. Reaching out is the ultimate error signal of being alive.
What a beautiful way to frame it.
What a journey this has been. We started by looking at how statistical mechanics, like entropy and multiplicity, can map perfectly onto the invisible architecture of human grief.
We explored how the brain hallucinates reality, making our capacity for surprise the very thing that anchors us to existence.
And we saw how an anomaly detecting machine proved that humanity's greatest unifying statistical trait is simply asking if anyone is listening.
The text takes the absolute coldest, hardest languages of science and reveals that they have been desperately trying to speak about our hearts the entire time.
It fundamentally rewires how you look at the world. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you, the learner, with a new thought to mull over, building on the mechanics we've unpacked today.
Okay, I'm ready.
Think about the algorithms that govern your digital life right now. The feeds, the recommendations, the predictive text. We assume they're just cold mathematical models designed to serve us targeted ads.
Right, just selling us things.
But what if they're doing exactly what Ysel's machine did? What if, beneath the surface, they are building a perfect mathematical model of your own unreturned longing?
Oh, that's heavy.
The next time an app predicts exactly what you want to see, ask yourself, is it just reading your data or is it reading your loneliness? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions into the dark.